Hello, everyone. Welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we have episode 101, and we got a pretty good episode coming up. We're going to talk a lot about the stuff that happened this weekend. You had Buatsi Parker, which was a very disappointing performance from Joshua Buatsi, and that somehow got rewarded in a win. I gave him 2 rounds of that fight. I think it's a ridiculous robbery, one of the worst robberies of the year. We're going to talk about UFC and how there was a huge betting scandal on that card, and it was an Apex that I thought delivered enough. I thought they had a lot of finishes on it, and I was fine with it. We're going to talk about the Linear Pero Jordan Thompson fight, and that was just kind of some subpar heavyweight action. But we're going to start off with what is going on with this Jake Paul Tank Davis fight. Guys, it is not looking good. Obviously, this is a very controversial fight to be taking place in the first place, but I think we can all agree that it's a big event for boxing, and we're all going to watch it, or we're planning to watch it. Now, obviously, last week the story comes out that Gervonta Davis has been accused of domestic violence yet again. Obviously terrible that somebody would do that, and I do think that some punishment should come from it, and it looks like that punishment is going to be he may be getting pulled from this fight. I don't know if this decision comes from Netflix, if it comes from MVP, if it comes from Tank's team himself, but it's not looking good. We're hearing that MVP has actually already put out a statement, and they said that they are investigating the situation, and they're looking into what the best decision is moving forward. It is at this moment, it has not been canceled. There's no new opponent, but we're hearing that they're sending offers to multiple replacement opponents all across the board, who we'll get into. They're looking at new dates. The dates proposed are December 12th and 19th. Those are possible dates that I think Mike Coppinger put out. It's not looking like this event happens. And with all the talk of them, looking for a new opponent and a new date, I just can't see them decide and announce this week, oh, yeah, we're actually just going to stick with November 14th first Tank. I don't think so. I don't think that Gervonta Davis is going to be fighting Jake Paul. And I also don't think that we're going to see an MVP event on November 14th, which does suck. But, I mean, it's just a bad circumstances. And there's only one thing that could have prevented this, and that's, not hitting women. Like, it's that hard. I mean, obviously, we don't know. It's just allegations at this point. But I wouldn't be shocked if they're true, just knowing Tank's track record. He has a history of doing these kind of things. But, yeah, it definitely does suck. But as for what the next steps are, the replacement opponents we're hearing, pretty crazy. I mean, just the fact that Jake Paul could literally fight anybody, and it kind of makes sense. So some of the names that we've heard have been offered replacements. You have Terrence Crawford, potentially the best boxer on the planet right now. Francis Ngannou, former UFC heavyweight champion, who's a unit. Ryan Garcia, so we all know about Ryan Garcia. Andre Ward, who's of course a retired, Hall of Fame boxer. Nate Diaz, who Jake Paul has already beaten in the boxing ring. So those are just some of the names, and it doesn't make any sense to me. As for those names in specifics, it will not be Terrence Crawford. They're just saying that. I don't even know if that's true. That's not happening. It's definitely not going to be Nate Diaz. At least I hope not, because I see 0 point in that, considering we've already seen it, and Jake Paul won that fight by a pretty wide margin. I don't see any reason to do that one, run that one back. Francis Ngannou is one that I think a lot of people are saying, because Francis Ngannou, of those names, definitely is the best chance, or at least, hold maybe Terrence Crawford, I guess, but Francis Ngannou definitely is the best chance of beating Jake Paul, because he is way bigger than Jake Paul, which is he's not used to. Obviously, Anthony Joshua is another name that we didn't hear about here, but we know that was a fight that was in negotiations for a long time. I don't think that's going to happen this year. Ngannou apparently said he was disrespected to have received an offer, thinking that he's way above that level. I would like to see Ngannou fight. I don't think Ngannou would piece him up and knock him out pretty quickly, but who knows. And then Andre Ward, I actually would not be opposed to that. I think I kind of like that one. I think Andre Ward probably beats him, but I don't think that one happens. And then Ryan Garcia is the one that probably got the most traction, because Ryan Garcia was seemingly saying that he was down for it, to do it in December, and that obviously be similar to Tank. He's a good bit bigger than Tank, so it makes more sense. And you just talk about the personalities that clash there. It'd be pretty fun. Unfortunately, Oscar De La Hoya said, no, we're not doing that. We have plans for Ryan. Ryan is a DAZN fighter. He's exclusive to DAZN. He's one of those bigger stars who signed a deal not only with Golden Boy, but more specifically with DAZN, like Anthony Joshua has. He cannot fight on Netflix, and Jake Paul's going to want this event to be on Netflix, so they're just not really going to happen. As for who I think it is, I don't know if it's going to be any of these names, as it seems like really nobody's falling through. I mean, just the ones I listed. Ngannou doesn't want to do it. Ryan can't do it. Nate Diaz, I have no interest in seeing that. I don't think anybody else does. Crawford is Definitely not going to do it. I would be shocked if Andre Ward did it. So who knows? Maybe they're going to pull another name out of the hat. There are options for Jake Paul to fight someone else. Who knows? Maybe Tommy Fury comes back and this is what we do. But I really don't know, man. I just don't know. So we'll see what happens with this event. Like I said, I don't think that Tank is fighting, and I don't think this event takes place in November. I think the whole card is just going to get pushed back until December, which is unfortunate. I don't know. Honestly, I live near Atlanta, and so I was really excited for that fight. This fight was initially going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, and then it got moved to Miami, and I was very upset. But you know what? Maybe everything happens for a reason because it wouldn't have happened anyways. So that's that. But let's talk about this weekend and the fights we had. Joshua Buatsi looked absolutely terrible. I don't know what it was, but he could just not get anything going. Zach Parker admittedly made it a boring fight, but outboxed him and was just doing everything with his jab, just moving around. Joshua Buatsi, he couldn't cut the ring off. He couldn't avoid the jab. He's just walking forward, doing nothing. And somehow, I watched this fight, and I'm honestly kind of upset because I'm a fan of Buatsi, and I thought I'm glad I didn't bet on it because I would have put the house on Buatsi. And then it turns out maybe I should have bet on it because somehow Buatsi gets the decision, which just made no sense to me. I mean, look, I scored the fight. I believe it was 98-92. Let me pull up my scorecard. I think I had a 98-92, in favor of Zach Parker. The scorecards that were listed were 95-95, 96-94, and 96-94, both for Buatsi. I think 95-95 is a horrible card. When I heard that, I laughed. I think 97-93 Parker, definitely reasonable. You can maybe if you're just looking for sympathy rounds, you can give him 96-94, maybe. But I honestly, I think that 98-92 is probably the most accurate card, if not even 99-91. I mean, Buatsi, there's a way you can score this fight and not give Buatsi a single round. Somehow, 2 of the judges only gave Parker 4. I mean, I think Zach Parker should appeal that. I think it should be investigated. Frank Warren said, he's like, yeah, we need to do something about these officiating. I mean, that is a terrible, terrible decision. I feel terrible for Parker because he, came up here, looked much, much better to a guy that he was a huge underdog against, and he gets nothing to show for it. And then Buatsi just gets a gift decision, can walk out. I mean, like, yeah, I didn't really look great, but, we got the win. And I'm like, dude, you did not win any of that fight. Like, how is this even possible? This is one of the worst robberies of the year where just it. And I don't often say, oh, you need to investigate that because, sometimes like, well, it was actually a little bit of a close fight. There are some swing rounds here and there. There's no way you can have Buatsi winning that fight. I just don't get it. So, I don't know, man. I don't know what this does to the light heavyweight landscape. I mean, you talk about Buatsi versus Yard. That would have been such an incredible fight like 3 years ago. And now both their stock has dropped so much. I didn't think that Buatsi's stock had dropped much from the Callum Smith fight. I thought that was a close fight that he lost, and it was a fight of the year. I thought he could hold his head up high from that. And him fighting Zach Parker, I was like, oh, he's dropping down more than he needs to. And then he pretty much gets beat by the guy and should have been beat. It's just really, really odd and disappointing for the BBBFC because it was just a bad night for them. They had another poor decision on the undercard. Let's talk about a fight that is probably going to be like one of the best fights of this part of the year, and that was Lyndon Arthur versus Brad Rea. Phenomenal. Lyndon Arthur gets dropped big time in the second round and then kind of rallies after the first few rounds. Maybe after, I think it was round 5, he goes on and just kind of wins almost the rest of the fight to win a pretty good decision. I thought that it was at the end, I didn't have I think my score was like 115, 112. So it wasn't like it was completely lopsided for Arthur, but definitely I think that he won that fight. And I think that Brad Rea, he signed with Queensberry. I hope he gets a good opportunity next because he definitely deserves one. He looked so good on Saturday night and just was a really good, fun fighter and just brought the action. But Lyndon Arthur, I feel like people forget, like this guy, he's only ever lost to the top level. I believe his only losses come to Anthony Yard twice and Dimitri Bivol. I feel like that's pretty good, Where, I mean, like a guy like Brad Rea, who even I was like, oh, maybe Brad Rea beats him. And then I'm thinking about it, I'm watching the fight, and I'm like, Lyndon Arthur's pretty good. Like, he should be able to beat guys like this. Like, you just look at his record. So, he did get the win. I think that Arthur versus Buatsi is a fight that could make sense next because I don't think that Buatsi wants to jump back into world level yet because, it was a really poor performance against Parker. Arthur is now the European champion, so there's fights there. There's so many good fights for the British scene on 175. This whole card was 175ers in the UK. Before that, you had Liam Cameron beating Troy Jones, which was another really bad decision. I had Jones winning 97-93. I only gave Cameron 3 rounds. There was one judge who had in 97-93 in favor of Cameron. That is a gift decision. I don't understand how you can do that. I mean, I thought that Troy Jones dominated the first 6 rounds of this fight, and then I gave Cameron the next few, and then I thought Troy Jones finished it strong with the 10th. I don't see there's any way how you can give Liam Cameron more rounds in that fight than Troy Jones. Like, I just don't see it. And I feel terrible for Jones because, again, he was the underdog here and put in a great performance and totally deserved the win. So it was a really, really bad night of judging. 2 big robberies. As for where they both go from here, I'm not really sure. I hope Troy Jones gets another opportunity, similar to Zach Parker. They just got really robbed in there, and they should be the ones who are, who have the regional belts with them, and they don't, which sucks. All these guys, I feel like everybody in this card you could just match up against each other, if I'm being honest. Liam Cameron will probably end up in a pretty decent fight next, as will Lyndon Arthur, as will Joshua Buatsi. I just hope the same can be said for Parker and Jones, and even Brad Rea. Even though I still think he lost his fight, I thought that he was really fun in there, and I hope that he gets to stick around. You also had Billy Denise largely dominate Ezra Arnieka in a really fun 8-rounder. I thought that fight had a really nice build-up, and the fight definitely delivered in itself. And then you had Khalil Majid in like a post-main event fight. He was in a really fun fight, one that he definitely won, but dropped a few rounds against David Ryan. I thought that was quite fun, and yeah, he'll probably be in another fun fight soon. I saw somebody mention he could fight Pierce O'Leary for the British title. That'd be a pretty fun one. So yeah, or the European title, excuse me. Although he could fight Rafferty or Chamberlain for the British title as well. I don't know. Lots of good fights to be made in the UK right now in that British light heavyweight division. It's just a really poor night of judging. Now, if we hop on over to Las Vegas, where we had the UFC Fight Night, this was Vegas 110. Main event, Steve Garcia finished David Onama. I picked David Onama to win that fight just with the knockout streak he's been on. But, man, Steve Garcia made it super easy. I didn't realize how long of a win streak Garcia had heading into this fight. So he's now probably going to break into the top 12 of the division, in terms of getting a fight with one of those guys. Probably move up a good bit. Featherweight's a pretty fun division, so he'll probably be in a good fight next. And, he got a really big opportunity to be main event on this card. And a lot of people didn't think that they deserved to be main event, so he definitely made it worth it. Walter Cortez Acosta and Ante DeLija, what are we doing here with the refs? This is like the 3rd time in a month where the fight is seemingly ended, and then they just unpause it and go back to fighting. Like how can this keep on happening? I don't get it. It happened in Abu Dhabi, or did it happen in Abu Dhabi or Vancouver? I can't remember. It happened recently on one of those cards. It also happened with the Neil Magny fight, where the essentially what happened was DeLija seemingly finished Waldo. I tweeted, I thought that he had stopped him and just like TKO'd him. Apparently it was an eye poke, so they're like, okay, we should do this. Now, when that happens, you don't operate like the fight is still going on. If you've ended the fight, you've ended the fight, and then you can make it a no contest afterwards. But you can't just unpause the fight. DeLija's over here celebrating. He's letting his adrenaline go down, and then like, okay, yeah, we're gonna keep on going, and it's like, what? And then Waldo ends up finishing him. So hey, you know what? Fair play to Waldo. He got a really big gift there in terms of getting able to continue the fight. Not saying that he should have been awarded the loss off an eye poke, right? Like, he doesn't deserve that either. But I just didn't think the fight should be unpaused when it's already been ended. So, again, just very weird officiating. As for everyone talking about the eye poke thing, Waldo can continue the fight, and he knocked his opponent out. Why couldn't Tom Aspinall do that? It's a different story every time. The difference in the amount of how much damage the eye poke does, it's not a one-to-one comparison. It's not like you get poked in the eye. Sometimes people get hit below the belt, and they're fine in 5 seconds. Look at Alex Pereira. Got hit below the belt, didn't even stop the fight. You look at Kevin Holland, he had to take 5 minutes, and even then he still wasn't recovered. So it just depends on how hard you get hit, what in the right spot. And I just don't think that Waldo's eye poke was as severe as Tom Aspinall was, at least not to him. So, I don't know. I just think it was so odd that they continued the fight after doing so. But hey, you know what? Waldo Cortez Acosta back in the win column and is like number 6 in the heavyweight division, so he'll probably get a good fight off the back of that. You had Jeremiah Wells have a good decision victory with Themba Gorimbo. The only decision of the main card, another fight that happened right before that, which we're going to talk about, and this is the big story. Yadier Del Valle wins in the first round via submission against Isaac Dulgarian. So A few days before this fight, Bulgarian was a 3-1 favorite. And then about an hour before this fight takes place, all of the money on betting sites starts jumping on over to Del Valle to win in the first round. Everyone starts betting on it. And I didn't know this at the time, but a lot of unusual betting activity going on. And then, funnily enough, Bulgarian gets submitted in the first round after a pretty, just like weak performance. And then we find out, okay, well, all this money started getting bet on him. It just doesn't make any sense since Bulgarian has been released from the UFC, he's been cut from the roster. And I think it's very clear here that there was some illegal betting and fight fixing going on. Now, do I think the UFC had anything to do with it? No, not at all. I mean, there's a chance that Del Valle didn't even have anything to do with it. And he's just going in there and Bulgarian just kind of threw the fight. But there's definitely something very suspicious. I don't know if it's like mafia related. I don't know what's going on. But, I mean, we just heard about the NBA scandal with the whole illegal gambling there with Terry Rozier and stuff. This is very similar, and I hope that it gets as much traction and as much investigation goes on because they do need to investigate this and because, we can't be fixing fights. There's a lot of fight fixing in general across the world. You just don't usually see it on this level. And what I mean by this level is on TV, on ESPN, with the UFC, the number one organization for combat sports in the world. You don't usually see that happening. So it's crazy they were able to get this going as close to the fight as they did, and they were even able to pull it off. So I hope that they're able to investigate this and figure out what happened. But really, really interesting story, and the UFC needs to figure out a way to prevent this from happening again because you cannot have corruption and fight fixing. You can't have it. So that was crazy. What else? Again, there's so many submissions on this card. Charles Radke, Alan Nascimento, Billy Elicana. It was a good one. I think it was a pretty good one. Dante Johnson submitting Cedricas Dumas as well. You also had Caitlin Vieira versus Norma Dumont on the prelims. Norma Dumont getting the 20, or excuse me. We know that's right. Yeah, Norma Dumont got the 29-28 split decision victory. I thought Vieira did enough personally. I had her winning 29-28. It's whatever. I think it was a close fight, so I'm not overly mad at who got who. Apparently, I think they said that Norma Dumont, this is like her 6th win in a row by split decision. So it definitely calls into question the legitimacy of her fights and how much she's really winning them by. But fair play to her. I mean, she's really close to a title shot at bantamweight. This was like a top 4 fight, I think. So winner of this is probably going to be in very good position to get that shot next against Kayla Harrison, after she fights Amanda Nunes, if that is even still happening. But, definitely an interesting story to follow. And then we also had a card in Orlando, Linear Pero, Jordan Thompson. Bit of a disappointing fight overall. I thought this was going to be a heavyweight, just slugfest ending in like 3 rounds. It was a pretty decent fight overall. I just thought that Jordan Thompson threw away the fight. He didn't start to win rounds until like round 7 when there was also a point deducted from Pero. I didn't think that he did anything enough at all. I thought that he was just, he was too hesitant to throw. This is his first fight in 2 years, first fight at heavyweight, just kind of testing the waters, trying to see what it felt like, trying to get his game plan going, but it just took him way too long. And once he did start trying to fight in rounds 7 and 8, he looked good, and he was able to, he started to win rounds, and then he gets hurt bad in the 9th, and then, of course, Pero ends up winning. I believe it was a unanimous decision, which was definitely the right call. Myself, I had it scored 95-94 in favor of Pero. I was honestly probably a little bit too kind to Thompson in the scoring. But look, Linear Pero is number 2 in the heavyweight division, ranked by the WBA. Makes absolutely no sense he's ranked that high. The WBA, I feel like in particular, they have horrible rankings. And, I mean, just him being a number 2 shows you. Jarrell Miller was at the fight, wanting to fight him. I have no objections to Jarrell Miller fighting him for the WBA in terms of like that spot, because it's a really good spot in the rankings. But in terms of the actual fight itself, I think that Linear Pero should definitely avoid that and try to get another fight to build him up. But he's going to need a real fight to prove, okay, yeah, I am the goods, because he didn't really do it on Saturday. He didn't look great either. So I don't know. I would like to see him fight Jarrell Miller, but I think Jarrell Miller definitely beats him. A fight that I suggested was Guido Vianello, who's like the gatekeeper. Have Pero fight him. If Pero beats him, which I think that he probably would, then, okay, yeah, this guy's legit. And then you could start throwing him in there with big guys. But you throw him in with someone as highly touted as Jarrell Miller, I don't know if it goes his way. And then as for Jordan Thompson, back to the UK, try and, get another win, maybe get a shot at the British title. Who knows? I think he could fit into that level pretty well. Dave Allen could be a fun fight. I doubt it happens next, but it's always a possibility. The standouts of this card were Amari Jones, who, had a 3rd-round knockout in his hometown of Orlando, Florida. Looked sensational. Really, really fun prospect, as did Pat Brown. This was his first 10-rounder against Felix Valera, a good fighter. And Pat Brown handled him so easily. Again, it's like the first round, Brown just kind of takes the round off, lets his guy figure himself out, and he's like, okay, I got you. And then just unleashes on them in the second round and the rounds to follow. So I feel like every fight, it's gotten quicker, his stoppage. So he's now 5-0, 5 KOs, already in 10-round fights. Look, I think that you can honestly get him into an English title fight next. Wait for the winner of John Hedges, El Azoro. I think they're going to try and move him pretty quickly and have him in the position to fight for a British title like next year. So, yeah, he's looking good. Eddie Hearn says he wants him to fight Alois Jr. I don't know if I'd put him in with Alois next, but I do think Pat Brown is going to end up at that level soon. I think he'll probably beat a lot of those guys. I think he's definitely the goods. Yoelvis Gomez versus Travis Ingram was a pretty fun fight. One that I had Gomez winning by 96-94. I thought it was closer than some, but I definitely don't think it was a draw as it was scored. I thought Gomez certainly deserved to get the decision. There was a lot of rounds in there that were tough to score, but again, I definitely would have thought Gomez won more. And then Nishant Dev also had a 6-round unanimous decision win. Didn't look spectacular. He's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes he'll have a good win with the stoppage. Sometimes it was kind of like boring over 6 rounds. But who knows? They announced he'll be back on their Ghana card, which we'll talk about later this episode. And then lastly, the BKFC card in Michigan, another banging BKFC card. I believe that it was only 2 decisions on the entire event, which is pretty normal for them. Esteban Rodriguez, first-round finish over Zach Cavender. One of the craziest fights ever. I mean, it's like 1 minute is all it took, and Rodriguez just steamrolled him. Cavender gave a lot of fight himself, but it was just like, it was so quick, so bloody, so fast. It was unbelievable how fast-paced that fight was. One of the most fast-paced fights I've ever seen. And Rodriguez gets the win. Huge character and calls for a title shot against Alessio Sakara. So he'll fit into the cruiserweight division nicely. And, they're building new stars. You also Nathan Rivera get a good win in the co-main event, stopping Tommy Stridham in, I think, round 3. So, lots of bright futures for these guys. I enjoyed it. I thought that it was a really fun card overall. And yeah. So, I don't know. BKFC, what I think is most important for them is to grow these fighters and to get them more profile, to grow them as stars, because they have the product. The fights themselves are so exciting. You just need people to know who it is. And they're doing that, I think. I think they're getting better at building up these fighters, making more compelling fights, and just selling them as fighters and not necessarily just as much as the organization and the gimmick of the sport. But let's talk about some news. One of the things that blew up Twitter, Eddie Hearn confirms that Anthony Joshua will be back by the end of the year. Now, I listened to another interview with him. It seems like he's saying again, I think he'll be back. He doesn't actually mean he's 100% booked and is going to fight. We had the announcement of the Ghana card today. He's not on it, at least not yet. As for the potential events he could fight on, Eddie listed the cards there for the rest of the year. Eubank Bentu, there's a possibility they run him back out in a really crappy 8-round fight. I don't know if I want him to fight someone too crappy, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did that in London. I doubt he'll be on the Benavidez Yard card. I'd be shocked if they put him on the Ben Whitaker card too. Monaco, definitely don't think he'll be on that. Diego Pacheco versus Kevin Lele Saggio, again, I just wouldn't expect him to be on that one. He will 100% not be on their midweek show, the Next Gen one with Giorgio Vizioli. There's no way they're going to put him on the undercard of a Wednesday night show at the Indigo. And then the one that I think makes most sense is Craig Richards versus Dan Aziz. And then you also do have the show in Riyadh, the all Japanese card, but I don't think it makes sense for him to fight on that. Just because it's all Japanese fighters on lower weight division. It doesn't make sense to have AJ on there against a no one. So I would definitely think that the Ghana card is most likely, considering he'll be fighting in Ghana in February, it seems. But who knows if he does still end up fighting. I hope they can get a deal done. And my preference is that he fights in Ghana, but we'll see. We'll see where it really ends up being, if it even happens at all. They may just throw him right into a fight next year. Mike Coppinger reported that Ryan Garcia, Mario Barrios is in discussions for Q1 2026. This is good to hear. This is part of the reason why I guess Oscar doesn't want Ryan to fight Jake Paul, is because they're working on getting him a world title shot, which I'd prefer he gets the world title shot. I think Ryan Garcia and Mario Barrios is actually a very well-matched fight. And I think Ryan Garcia would beat him. I think he'd be the favorite in that fight. I think that Mario Barrios is not even a top 10 welterweight. Ryan Garcia barely is. And welterweight's a pretty crappy division. So as far as this being a world championship, it's like, yeah. But in terms of the actual fight itself, and how much pay-per-views it would draw in, the attention it would have, I have no objections to this one being next. Obviously, getting a world title shot off of a loss, don't love it, but it is what it is. Ryan Garcia is a big name. Mario Barrios' last fight was against a guy who hadn't fought in 3 years. So he's got a great manager who keeps on getting him these big fights. We're hearing it be a joint pay-per-view between DAZN and Prime Video. So I'm not sure how that split works, but yeah, this looks like it could be happening next, and I have no problems with it. I think it'd be a lot of fun to see those two guys throw down early next year, and I definitely just want to see Ryan Garcia back in the ring. Another report we had is that Eduardo Nunes versus Emmanuel Navarrete is apparently set for March 7th in Phoenix, Arizona. It's confirmed, or not confirmed, but it's being reported that the deal is done for an IBF and WBO super featherweight unification battle. Two Mexicans, two guys with high knockout records, two of the most unanimously decided exciting fighters in the sport of boxing. I love it. I love this fight so much. I think it makes so much sense. Sure, I'd like to see Navarrete versus Foster and Nunes versus Ford. There's lots of good fights to make in that division, but you can't complain at all at this fight coming through. It seems like Matchroom is doing a good job of getting their schedule really strong for the start of next year, including having a lot of Matchroom versus Top Rank matchups. Obviously, Top Rank still does not have a TV deal, and now a lot of their world champions are heading over to DAZN to make fights there, and PBC cards, of course. But yeah, this is a good one. I love this fight. It is definitely a bit of a ways away in terms of where we are now, but when we were hearing it could be happening in January, I thought it was going to be in February. But I think they want to do this in a part of America where you have a big Mexican audience, and maybe this was the only date that worked with that venue. But yeah, it looks like they will be fighting March 7th of next year, which is awesome to hear. We did unfortunately have the news that it seems that Dillian Whyte Derek Chisora 3 is not going to happen on December 13th. This sucks. This just sucks so bad because this December 13th card, we were getting hyped up. Oh man, it's going to have Moses Tama on it and Derek Chisora, two really famous British heavyweights. Moses Tama coming onto the scene strong, and Derek Chisora is going to be his final fight. And then Moses Tama was no longer fighting on it, and now neither is Derek Chisora. And I don't even think this event's going to happen at all anymore. So it just really blows for Queensberry. I don't know what happened. Obviously, they announced this fight at the Parker Wardley fight, or at least they had them both on stage. They're like, yeah, we're working on a contract. Hyped everyone up for nothing. As soon as they brought them out on stage, like, okay, the deal's not done. It's not happening then. It's not happening because now you put the bad karma out there and you've announced it before the deal is done, and this just keeps on happening, and then the fight falls through and it doesn't happen. So looks like they're not going to be fighting December 13th. We'll see if they fight at all. Hopefully maybe they can try and get another deal worked out for next year pretty early on. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think that we're going to be getting this big Queensberry Manchester card in December after all, which is unfortunate. It really is. And obviously, White Chisora 3 is not a fight that needs to happen, but it just makes so much sense for both of them. They both need to retire. Why not just throw them out on another great end of their rivalry? Have a few fun rounds in Manchester. Let's just do it. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen at all. And that is that. Speaking of some other Queensberry heavyweight news, the opponent for Aga Cabello has been announced for January 10th, and it's Damian Kaneba. Very, very disappointed in this, if I'm being honest. Aga Cabello is, for me, he's the number 2 heavyweight in the world right now. You can argue if it's him or Fabio Wardley. I personally think he's better than Fabio Wardley, and Joseph Parker and Daniel Dubois, right now at least. And Damian Kaneba, he's just been really disappointing his last few fights. Sure, he's undefeated, but he's just been going the distance, just looking like a slug, not exciting. And now he's going to get a shot at one of the best heavyweights in the world. Now, for Kaneba, it's great. For Cabello, it's very disappointing, and it kind of makes me wonder, okay, why are you fighting these guys? Why are you not fighting, someone who's actually really good? And I think he's just kind of trying to preserve his record until he gets the shot at Usyk. I think he doesn't want to take any huge challenges. Now that he's earned it, he went through Makhmudov, he went through Sanchez, he went through Zhang. Now that he's fought these tough names, he's like, okay, people know me now. People want me to get the title shot. I don't have to prove myself. I'm just going to sit on my wait for a bit, because there's no way that Kaneba wins this fight. I'm heavily favoring Cabello. I would have loved him to fight someone like Lawrence Okoli even, or Daniel Dubois. We thought that was going to happen. I don't know. This is just a really disappointing opponent. Obviously, Tony Yoka and Nelson Hisa were two names that were mentioned, which I didn't love those either, but I would have been much better with them because they're at least, in form, kind of exciting heavyweights, I guess. Damian Kaneba is just not. So, yeah, really, really disappointing in that fight getting announced. Was hoping for better. Chantel Cameron has vacated her WBC super lightweight world title. Obviously, she was ordered to face Sandy Ryan, which is a great fight. And then day of the purse bid, she vacates the title, pulls out, and joins the MVP protest for 3-minute rounds. I have to be honest, this seems a little bit like she's kind of avoiding it. Shouting so long, I want my title shot, against Katie Taylor. And then, Katie Taylor's like, look, I'm not going to give it to you. You can have your belt, though. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to fight Sandy Ryan, though. I only wanted to fight you. That's kind of what it feels like because Chantel Cameron's been with MVP. She's fought 2-minute rounds. She's never demanded 3-minute rounds in the past. Not to say she's like, oh, like opposed to it. It just seems a little bit like an excuse. But hey, you know what? I do agree that women should be allowed to fight 3-minute rounds. I think that they should. And the WBC is the only one who's not willing to work with them. So yeah, if MVP fighters are going to band together and say, look, we're not going to fight for the WBC unless we get our 3-minute rounds, then I love it. But I don't know if that's the true reason behind this. It was announced that Adam Azim versus Kurt Scobie will be on November 15th on the Eubank Ben undercard. Pretty decent replacement. I think Kurt Scobie's a fun fighter. He's got a lot of power. I do think Adam Azim beats him. I think he probably stops him as well. I think he's levels above. But this is not a bad replacement for 2 weeks' notice at all. What I like about it, though, is that they specifically stated Ring Magazine has confirmed that the deal has been reached. Obviously, he was meant to fight Zaur Abdullayev. They never actually had a deal in place for that fight. They were working on one. And then Abdullayev just said, look, we never agreed a deal. I'm out. And now he just announced a fight for the next weekend in Russia, I believe. So, hey. Again, same thing with the White Chisora fight. Why are we announcing fights that don't have a deal in place? We now have a deal in place for Azim versus Scooby. Fun enough fight. One that Azim will win. But not a bad replacement opponent on just a few weeks' notice. I really don't hate it. I really don't. Glad he could stay on the card. We're also hearing that Berlanga and Jose Armando Resendiz are in talks for a Q1 fight. I like that fight. I actually think it makes sense. Berlanga wants to come back, but he's got to fight someone that is a real tough, proven contender. And, I thought he was going to come back against someone who he'd be the favorite against. I mean, Demetrius Andrade has been out for so long. I think that's a fight that both those guys, not in the top 10 of 168, really need to prove themselves again. And Jose Armando Resendiz, I think that he deserves a spot in the top 10 of that division. And I actually think it's a little bit, I think it's almost a bad call for Berlanga. Because, look, for me, I'm favoring Resendiz in that fight. Resendiz just upset and dominated Caleb Plant for, their entire fight. And then you look at Berlanga, he's coming off a KO loss to Hamza Shiraz, a really hard KO loss. So you're going to come in with someone who's in much better form than you and dominated the guy we all wanted to see Plant fight Berlanga. Plant would have beat up Berlanga. That's a fight you could do. They're both coming off losses. Do Plant versus Berlanga. Look, I love it for Berlanga. He's not ducking any challenges. He's like, throw me in there with someone really tough. But Resendiz wins that fight. At least in my opinion, he does. We'll see if that stays the case. But we also had the announcement of PBC's December 6th prelims. Obviously, they just announced the main card. It's so stacked. I mean, you got Pitbull versus Roach, Lara versus Janabek, Fulton versus Foster, Ramos versus Mosley. Then you add on to it their prelims. Frank Martin versus Runces Barthélemy, which was, of course, meant to be the headlining prelim on the last card. That didn't end up happening. But, I mean, that's a great, addition to this. Isaac Lucero versus Roberto Valenzuela Jr., which was meant to be on the last pay-per-view. And then Luis Nunez versus Hector Sosa. All these fights were meant to happen on October 25th. But, dude, this is such a good 7-fight card. And I think that Pitbull Roach may be in contention for the best card of the year, outside of Riyadh season cards. Like the last Crescendo and Ring 4 Night of Champions. Those are definitely the two best cards we've had this year. But I think this is firmly behind those. I don't know. I think at the end of the year, I'm going to make a lot of my top 10 cards and a lot of stuff like that. This is going to be on there. Probably in the top 5. This is a really, really stacked night of boxing. And, PBC doesn't do as many events as they should. But when they do, they deliver really stacked pay-per-views, all with fun 50-50 fights, at least mostly. And this looks like it's going to be no different, including even the prelims. Let's talk about this Ghana card that was announced. Craig Richards versus Dan Aziz, which I think is a really good fight right now. I think that's very well matched. Again, like we were talking about with the Queensberry card, so many good domestic light heavyweights in the United Kingdom. Obviously, this fight not happening in the UK, which I'm okay with. Both these guys have African roots. Fun fight. You're going to have Leo Atang on the card as well as having Nishant Dev. So good to see them getting out there. And then you're also going to have a lot of local regional level fights. Jerry Larty will be on this card, but then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 fights and a fifth one, most of which are featuring regional title fights. So you're probably gonna have a lot of 10-rounders with IBF, your regional whatever titles on this card. So I think it's gonna be pretty fun. And again, like I said, Anthony Joshua could end up featuring on this. It's a card late in the year in a new location, outdoor stadium. Why not? This is gonna be a really fun night of boxing. The main event's good. In terms of the actual names on the undercard, yeah, there's not a lot to it. But in the fight itself, I like the fight. I like the location. I like the prospect of moving into Africa more, and I like the possibility of Anthony Joshua featuring on this. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. MVP President Nikisa Badarian has teased that there will be a major fight announcement this week, and it's not related to Jake Paul. So he put this out saying, "Oh, we got a big fight announcement coming this week." I automatically assumed, "Oh, he's just talking about the replacement for Jake Paul, Tank Davis." Then he says it's not related to Jake Paul. So I'm like, okay, let's see what it is. I'm guessing it's going to be. I don't think it's a new event, although I'd like that. Maybe MVP Fight Night 2, which would be cool. But I think it will be probably the undercard for the Amanda Serrano fight, or at least a big fight on it. And I'm just going to throw out a prediction, which I don't know if it's true. Xander Zayas is apparently in deep negotiations with Abbas Baru for a unification fight, and we're hearing that could land in Puerto Rico. I would love if that was the co-main event on this card. Obviously, you could argue it should be the main event, but Amanda Serrano is a huge star in Puerto Rico. Top Rank does not have a TV deal. Wasserman is not going to put up the money for this fight. MVP may do it and say, hey, yeah, you can have that fight on our card in Puerto Rico. So I would not be surprised at all if that's the big fight announcement. And that is a great fight between two champions in the most stacked division in boxing at 154. I would love if we got that one next. So we'll see if that is the case, if it ends up going through. But that's just my prediction. We'll see if it happens. But I'm excited to hear what this news is from MVP. And yeah, let's see. Let's just see who's fighting who. And then lastly, BKFC 85. The main card has been confirmed for December 5th. You're going to have Austin Trout, Luis Palomino in the lightweight semifinal they're doing. Good rematch. And then you're also going to have Justin Ibarola versus Ryan Ribber for the vacant bantamweight title. So good fight there. And then you're also going to have Leonardo Perdomo returning against Corey Willis. Perdomo, their Cuban heavyweight, who's just a sensation. Stops like everyone in the first round. He's going to fight Corey Willis. He's waiting on a title shot. And he fights like every Hard Rock card. So looking forward to that. And then you've also got G. Perez back against Chancey Wilson. So again, like I mentioned, BKFC, they can really grow more if they just focus on making good fights with building up stars. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing on this card. Perdomo, get behind him. So looking forward to that. A lot of good stuff coming up in the next few weeks. That's all I've got for today. We'll do another episode before the end of the week because got a good weekend of fights. You got another UFC Apex card, I know, but then we got 322, and then you get Qatar, and then 2 weeks later you get 323, and then one more Apex card, which is a pretty solid one. So we're getting towards the end of the year, but just one more stinker, and then we get good cards for the rest of the year from the UFC. Some great cards for the rest of the year. You also got Virgil Ortiz, Erickson Lubin, big fight at 154. Ortiz wins that, which I think he will. Boots is going to be ringside. That could be a lot of fun. Maybe we get that one next. Misfits Duel, their smaller event, which looks like a ton of fun, is on Sunday. GBM's 8-man super middleweight tournament, that's going to be awesome. And then a really good Pro Box TV card with the main event of Niklaus Flaz versus Tiger Johnson. Very intriguing fight at welterweight. So yeah, good stuff coming up over these next few days. But thank y'all so much for listening. Have a good week, and peace out.